How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm going to go and test this thing out. It's a mod they've added pretty recently. It's called The Last Raider by Zidon, or Zidon. So yeah, I'm going to take it for a little test drive. It's basically like an old LandRover Defender. They've also added an update tonight. A few people said it was about 12 or 13 gig. The one I got in the end, I believe, was about 9.5 gigs or something like that. It didn't take silly long to download in the end, but I paused it. I tried to go on my game to recover any trucks I've left out back to the garage again, and I was able to do it on one map, and then when I tried loading up the next map, the game just froze. Eventually it brought up like blue screened me and all that, and then yeah, so I just kind of got on with it, updated the game anyway, and yeah, went back on it. All my trucks seemed fine so far, touch wood. Yeah, so I just had a little look around the mods. Like I said, there's a few others I need to test, but yeah, I jumped in this thing, and to be honest, first sort of impression, I've not been driving around in it for hours or anything, but I sort of quite like it. I mean, it's not too nuts or anything. It's got a nice, decent amount of power, but it's not anything like too insane. It's got a good selection of gearboxes. There's like the off-road and the high range, but then there's special versions of the off-road and high range. I tried both of them out, to be honest, and they both felt pretty good. They've even the off-road, like the special off-road, was pretty nice. I think it had, was it 5 or 6 gears, but it just felt like it applied the power pretty well. The same with the high range. Stick it in the high range gear and it gets motoring along really. Yeah, I'm only going to have a first little play around on this test map. It's just I wasn't too sure about the bugs, because at the minute, as this is quite a new mod, it's not got that many thumbs up, thumbs down or whatever. I think it's sitting at around 80% at the minute, which, unless it's causing a lot of crashes for people, yeah, I'm not too sure. I think it should eventually get up into like the 90s for the rating, because yeah, I do think it's a pretty nice sort of addition to the game. Cutting through the water now, I mean, it's not doing too bad. It doesn't weigh a hell of a lot, so you can definitely see the water's trying to push it over, but yeah, we're only talking like a scout size thing anyway. As for tyres and that as well, there's a few custom options. Mainly the tyres go up to about 39 inch, but then these tyres I've got on are basically the yard tyres. They're 49 inch versions, I believe. And I prefer the fact that I can have tyres this big on it, because I don't think they look silly big or anything. I've seen, you know, plenty of off-road vehicles that have got slightly bigger than normal tyres if they're going to be doing quite a bit of off-roading. But yeah, personally for me, I'm just not that keen on the yard tyres themselves. I've never thought they're that good. That's one of the things that, like, overall, I quite like the Yar in the game, but I don't like the tyres that much. I think they're very, very slippy on tarmac and all the rest of it. And even though the Yar itself and the tyres should be pretty well matched as snow, they seem to be terrible in snow in this game. And yeah, I remember, like, the Yar, it just goes about 1 mile an hour on every bit of snow, unless it's like some kind of half snow, half mud driven path. Then yeah, they're pretty bad, but I wanted to have a go on this, see how well it does. And yeah, I mean, overall the truck handles them pretty well, but they're definitely still a bit on the slippy side. But still, it's nice that you can go up to that tyre size. I did try some of the other tyres as well, back down to like the 39 inch, and there's a few custom ones that I assume they've designed themselves and kind of added along with this. But yeah, you can see, even flopping around on this thing, it's not just trying to jump over to its side or anything. It actually feels pretty well weighted. Low down, in some respects, certainly not all. It's definitely yeah, not full on horse of a vehicle, but there is like a slight characteristic of the loaf about it, I think, where it does sit very low down, like the weight wise, and it wants to return back to its wheels quite a lot. Another thing I like, especially with these bigger tyres, is because the tyres are practically at the front, even though you can see I kind of almost smash my nose into the next bump, the tyres are close enough to the front that they sort of dig in and flick my nose back out of the dip, and I sort of carry on rather than catching that on everything. So yeah, it did pretty well there. Got up here pretty nicely. That's what she said. And yeah, overall, I mean, even the suspension's not trying to smash itself to pieces or anything like that. Engine-wise, I think the first stock engine you get is like a 2.5 litre something. You can eventually, I've gone straight for the biggest engine. I think it's the 5 litre odd V8, which, yeah, overall, I think actually does suit it pretty well, because I think in this game it definitely leans towards the slow side of things anyway. And even though I've certainly been in a fair few of these here and there, but yeah, they're not the fastest things in the world, but at the same time, you know, they are stuff is capable of more than 5 miles an hour, which this game tries to portray that speed a lot, like that's what everything does. Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, it's not a race car or anything. You can see now it's not flying through the gears. High range was a pretty nice balance to it, still enough oomph there that it was kicking along, but yeah, if you go up to like the special high range gearbox or the special off-road, you could get enough speed in the high range that it'll almost start to try and Jeff special and all the rest of it, which can be fun in its own right. It was also controllable. I mentioned it before with high range a bit, but it's kind of like, if you go into high range when you're close to matching that speed anyway, it'll just kind of settle down into it. If you're going pretty slow and you drop it in high range, it tends to take off like a maniac. But yeah, you could see doing some off-roading there as well. It still didn't tip over. The horn as well is pretty nice, all things. Well, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as say pretty nice, but it's alright. It's decent enough for a Scout. It's not one of those horrifically high-pitched little squeaky things or anything. So these are some of the other tyres on it. I believe these are the 39-inch. I can't remember what the abbreviation is. It's like Z something. I mean, maybe it's like the name of the modder, like some code name for his tyres. But yeah, they're all a few different versions. They all tended to say roughly the same thing. They're all better suited to, you know, dirt and mud and snow and everything, but not so grippy on road. The descriptions were slight variations of that. Like some were slightly better on road and so on. But yeah, I kind of went for the tyres that I like the look of the alloys and the tread pattern, to be honest. Yeah, as you can see now, I mean, it's certainly not painfully slow or anything. Went to have a go on the tree, yeah, I just bounced off it. There certainly isn't a lot of weight to this thing. But it doesn't necessarily feel like a complete empty crisp packet once, yeah, you're sort of driving around. For the most part, it does kind of what you'd need it to. It's got enough of a decent planted feel to it that it's, yeah, like I said, not just floating around like a fart in the wind or something. As for the suspension as well, I mentioned it, I went and got the raised suspension. There is an even taller suspension than this. One thing I do like as well though, when I was selling it back as I was coming back out of the game, I dropped it down to the normal suspension, but I could still put the biggest yard tyres on and all sorts, even though they did look like they glitched into the arch a bit. I'm not that bothered, to be honest, because looks-wise, yeah, I'd get the lifted suspension or put smaller tyres on, but if on the occasion I just want to mess around, have the lowest suspension possible and some big fat tyres, it's nice that the option's there, and I don't really care that it glitches through the wheel arches a bit. You can see there as well, I climbed up that rock pretty decently. Like yeah, I think more probably that it hasn't got a lot of weight to it. It wasn't a hell of a lot of weight to fight climbing up the rock, but either way, it doesn't really bother me. The end result was I was able to climb up there, so it's nice. Had to go and test it, do a little jump on White Belly. I will say, oh, it wasn't at this point actually. It was after I did the first few jumps. I went to go to Drowned Lands and I got blue screened, and obviously just like sort of quit the game or whatever. Well, it made me quit the game, and then I loaded it back up. When I loaded it back up, I didn't get a message saying like corrupted data or anything. And obviously I wanted to mention it, but I don't know for certain if it is this, because like I said, while my computer was kind of downloading the update, I went onto my maps to try and recover some vehicles, and I got blue screened then, and when I loaded the game back up, it even said corrupted data, like restore data. So I kind of got a worse blue screen before I ever even downloaded this or anything. It was like nothing to do with this. So I can't 100% say if it's like this or just the update, or if I just got unlucky. You can see a minute ago I did a nice little barrel roll off the cliff, which I was pretty happy with. Then kind of went wrong and I flew off the side of the cliff, but it returned back to its wheels pretty well. And then when I jumped off again, even though I landed and rolled back to my side, I was going pretty slow at the time, but it still had enough like momentum in it and the weight low down that it got back to its wheels. And that's what I was saying, it's got a slight kind of loafy feel to it, where it yeah, not a lot of stuff really, unless it's got a bit of momentum with it. It tends to just stay laying on its side. The loaf is one of the rare exceptions where, not to say you can't, you know, end up on the side, but it tips back to its wheels pretty bloody well. And yeah, this thing certainly did pretty cool there. I jumped it off this cliff, I don't know, 5-6 times, whatever, and I think unless I went so far in the water, I just floated. But yeah, I believe it got back to its wheels like every time. And climbing up here as well, it's certainly enough that it was able to climb up here. Gets a little bit sketchy there. I still think, I mean, it's not strictly speaking this mod, but it'd be interesting to see if it's even possible, if any modder can overcome the fact that rocks in this game just have no grip. Practically no grip anyway. Certainly less than I think you'd get. I admit, an icy rock in situations like this probably would be pretty slippy, but just say normal situations on like drowned lands and stuff, or Black River or whatever, yeah. I remember there's one on YouTube of some like Jeep or something driving up what looks like a damn near vertical slope, and that, I'm sure that's like a pure rock face, but they've obviously got it in like a seriously low range gear, and yeah, it motors up there, so compared to this, like, you're pretty much skating on black ice when you're on them rocks. But again, it still bumbled its way over those. Didn't get too hung up on that tree branch either. Yeah, so overall, I mean, I can't really find any faults with it. I don't really know what to... Like, it sits on its wheels pretty nicely. It returned back to its wheels pretty nicely. It's got certainly enough engine power that it doesn't feel slow or boring or anything like that. Yeah, the gearboxes all work pretty nice. The tyre selection's pretty nice. The fog lights are pretty bright on it. You've got roof racks and all different options as well. For the most part, I left the roof racks on. I believe I do try one of the roof racks in a minute, because, in fact, one thing I would say about it, if anything, if there was some criticism then, the back end is a little bit light, so as you're driving along, you can start to get, yeah, the back end gets loose pretty easily. However, that's, I believe, in the end, the reason I put one of the roof racks on, just to see if that'd settle it down or not, and it kind of did, really. And it's not the end of the world anyway, as you'll see in a second. It was quite fun for the sakes of just messing around and drifting around, but yeah, if I was going to go and take this thing like on a proper mission or something, I'd probably stick a roof rack on just to keep it a little bit more planted, because it didn't really seem to nerf its speed completely. It just, yeah, made it a little bit more stable. Overall though, I actually would quite gladly, if and when I start another playthrough, like I said, I still want to get to doing live streaming. It's a long story, but yeah, I'm trying to get to it pretty soon. But yeah, I'd be interested in keeping this sort of in there as one of the mods that I end up using. So it ran the loaf. That's where it went wrong. Nearly deleted itself, not the loaf. The loaf took no damage. This thing took about 58. Yeah, you can see now the back end is a bit lively. Again, Loaf is a goddamn horse of a vehicle. Got a rear end made of pure Russian stellinium. Yeah, you can see now, by the way, I've got the back to a slightly different set, but 39-inch tyres, and again with the roof rack on. I was still kind of purposely making it drift around now, but there is more weight to it, and it was a bit more planted. You'll see now when I drift, it was the one and only time I actually tipped over, because with the added weight there was more friction on the tyres, etc. So yeah, it does actually change the balance a little bit, but of course, goddamn horse of a vehicle saved the day. Yeah, anyway, that's about it though. I'd say it's worth grabbing and having a little test drive. But that's about it for today. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.